The major non-African countries contributing troops and police to the 9 UN peacekeeping operations in Africa are Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Nepal, and China. On the other hand, the United States pays for 28% of the global UN peacekeeping budget, and Japan has been paying 11%, the number 2 position, and France, Germany, the UK, and China tied for the next place at about 7% each. Now, China announced late last year an increase in its contribution, which will move it by July of this year to 2nd place, just ahead of Japan. While non-Western countries provide most of the UN peacekeepers in Africa, Western countries pick up most of the tab. Except for UN peacekeeping operations in Africa, the principal providers of troops to maintain African security are African forces themselves and French forces in Mali, Niger, Chad, Senegal, Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Gabon, Central African Republic, and Djibouti. The U.S. has a major military facility in Djibouti, small drone surveillance operations in Niger and the Seychelles and Burkina Faso, and small numbers of troops assigned to operations to counter the Lord's Resistance Army in Central Africa, Al-Shabaab in Somalia, and Boko Haram in northern Cameroon. The U.S., France, and the United Kingdom do much of the training of African peacekeeping forces. China, Turkey, and several other nations are getting involved in the training of African troops. China, Russia, France, the Ukraine, and the U.S. are the major supplier of arms to Africa. Following the problem of piracy in the Gulf of Aden, a number of Western and emerging countries contributed ships to end the piracy. And although piracy has largely ended, China, Japan, and India are retaining a significant naval presence in the region. Japan has established a military base in Djibouti, and China is in the process of constructing one. India has countered with a joint Indian Seychelles facility in the Seychelles, and even Saudi Arabia has announced its intention to establish a military base in Djibouti. Between 1949 and 2008, China's PLA Navy made three calls in African ports. Between 2009 and 2015, China's PLA Navy made 39 calls in African ports, 20 of them at Djibouti as part of the anti-piracy effort in the Gulf of Aden. Over the next 10 years, there will continue to be increasing foreign naval activity in the Western Indian Ocean, especially by China and India. You will also see more port calls at African ports by ships from a number of non-African navies. I doubt there will be a significant change in support for UN peacekeeping operations, except that China may increasingly commit combat troops and slowly increase the number of its troops in Africa. In the case of other security threats to African countries, the heavy lifting will be left to France, especially in Francophone countries, and to the United States in countering terrorist groups. African forces themselves, however, will play a greater role in UN peacekeeping operations, and African Union-sponsored peacekeeping operations may become more frequent. Emerging Asian nations, especially China and India, will continue to expand their influence in Africa over the next 10 years in the trade, aid, investment, and security sectors. Depending upon the price of oil, the Gulf states may also continue their influence. Turkey and Brazil will make every effort to continue or to expand their engagement in Africa unless internal problems force them to draw back. Russia will return to Africa in a significant way if its economy improves and it does not face major new challenges. But Western countries collectively in Europe and North America are still the predominant partners with Africa, and this will be the case 10 years out. Perhaps most important, African countries, sub-regional African organizations, and the African Union will take greater responsibility for their economic future and security. Thank you.